Good evening, everybody. This is part 2 to November 9th's vlog. I will be talking about my experience at the Santa Barbara Museum of Contemporary Art and the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. So let's get into it. So I actually heard about this exhibit by going to the library, and at the library I was signing up for a library card, and you get to pick out of 4 options what design you want on your library card. So I chose this design, and it's super cute, and the front desk person told me that it's by DJ Javier, and he actually has an exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and it's free. So I was like, I'm definitely going to go do that. So I went today with Fia. We went to the museum. It's in Paseo Nuevo. So going in the actual installation, the exhibition room, the colors were so vibrant, and immediately I knew I connect with this art. I really have fallen in love with the kind of street art, bold letters, graffiti type beat. And that was just covering the walls, the neon colors. I just loved it all, and it's something that really spoke to me. I really liked the use of lettering on this one, and just the colors and the object of the wave. I thought that was beautiful. Yeah, and then the wall of t-shirts, it was so cool to see in person. So let me tell you a little bit about the artists and the exhibition. So the name of the exhibition is San Milano Drive, and DJ Javier is a first-generation Filipino-American artist who grew up in Santa Barbara, California. He has a passion for his heritage, Santa Barbara, and contemporary surf culture. There is an installation of a video game machine, which people were using while we were there. It was super cute, and they were singing, and that just set the vibe. It was good vibes. The Museum of Contemporary Art website, Santa Barbara website, they write, his body of work is a vibrant testament to his cultural heritage, personal experiences, and the countercultural landscapes of Southern California. You can support DJ Javier by following him on Instagram. I am going to put a link to his Instagram in the caption. Or you can go to the MCASB site and you can purchase a limited edition print. They're really cool. Yeah, and there's other that you can buy a shirt in the museum, if you're in town. Yeah, super cool. So my POV, my thoughts on the exhibit, I just felt really inspired, and I felt seen as a Santa Barbara local and person with a unique cultural heritage. It was really cool to see someone be so passionate about their heritage, and also the fact that they grew up in Santa Barbara. I've always asked myself, where does Santa Barbara fit in with my identity, or how does it shape it, and is it worth sharing? And after seeing this installation, I just feel validated, and I feel like I want to talk about my experience, and my stories of growing up here and how that's influenced me. My entire life I've always been is my identity experience valid? I'm not from my mother, or my homelands. I'm from Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara means so much to me, but is it something I can talk about? And after visiting this installation, the answer is yes, definitely. I also thought it was really cool that he has similar passions, Santa Barbara for one, and his own culture, his Filipino culture. I'm very interested, very involved in my own culture, and that's something that comes through my art as well. And he's also interested in surfing, which I thought was really interesting and really cool to see someone of a culture making their own space in the surf world, because people gatekeep surfing, and surfing is a sport. It should be accessible to everyone with the ocean, not just landlocked states. It should be accessible. I mean, yeah, they have surf pools and whatever, but yeah, sure, surfing should be accessible, and it should be fun, and it should be open to everyone. And I think this really spreads that message, which is really cool. I took up surfing, and I definitely felt intimidated not seeing a lot of people like me out in the water in Santa Barbara. And so if I had known about DJ Javier back then, like, that would have been a game changer. So really cool that he's doing this. Doing an exhibition like this is a dream for me. I thought it was just like so inspiring. I felt really inspired leaving the place and really empowered. And so I just like, thank you Santa Barbara Contemporary Art Museum for putting this on, for letting DJ Javier have the space, and DJ Javier for making his art. So next stop was the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. My brother and sister-in-law told me that it was free today for residents of Santa Barbara. So we got in. Unfortunately, there was an exhibit called Monet to Matisse, which wasn't free. You had to pay $20 that day to see that, and we were kicked out of the room when we didn't know we were walking into it. So there are 3 pieces from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art that really stood out to me, and I wanted to talk about them. The first one is a piece called Ex Parte US, and it was made in 2024 by conceptual artist Hank Willis Thomas, who is American, and he uses reflective surfaces to combine images, and use of flash photography reveals Japanese American school children reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. He used a real photograph taken during the period where Japanese Americans were forcefully relocated to concentration camps. And Santa Barbara Museum of Art, the March 2025 newsletter says people with as little as 1/16 Japanese heritage could be incarcerated. The title of the piece refers to legal concept in a landmark 1944 Supreme Court case which helped end internment. It really stood out to me because there was an American flag. So we went up the steps and it was to the left, and I saw the big American flag, and I knew that it had to be political. Side note, little tangent, I had a professor in college who said, when art is political, it ruins the art. And I just completely disagree. I think that is complete bullshit. And I can't believe he was spreading that in a college class. But I noticed the flag was backwards, and that also caught my attention. And I came to a conclusion that it was a photo. And then after looking at the caption, it says it's a real photo, which just emphasized the insane reality of the concentration camps and just how sad that period was and still is for people. Once I turned my flash on, I could see the children, and it reminded me of the first time I learned about the internment camps, which was in elementary school when someone who had a grandparent in the camps came, or a parent, I believe, in the camps came to speak. It was his parent, his dad, came to speak to the class, and that was just really impactful part of my education. And when I was younger, I also visited one of the camps in California called Manzanar, which actually I thank my dad for exposing us to reality. So ex parte is a legal term and the title, and I thought it was really smart to name it this. The Oxford Languages website says ex parte means done with the interests of one side only or an interested outside party. That completely captures just like the ideology and the one-sided fear that Americans had about Japanese people turning against America, Japanese Americans turning against America. I think it's interesting that the artist is not Japanese American. I wonder what experience moved him to create this piece. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that piece. It was really neat to see in person. So the second piece I wanted to talk about is called Landscape in Lava by Fernand Lundgren. He's an American artist that lived from 1857 to 1932. My first thoughts, when I saw this piece, what grabbed my attention was that I just thought it was beautiful, and I do love landscapes. I do paint a lot of Southwest landscapes, so this really jumped out at me. I like the details on the lava rocks, and when glancing at the description, I was like, oh, ayo, that's the motherland. And so the museum description wrote that desert landscapes were his focus because Santa Fe Railroad hired him as a part of a tourism campaign in the 1890s. And then a quote from the artist himself, he says, "I found while the desert atmosphere made for an abundance of detail, things really looked better and gave a sure sense of reality when a process of elimination took place." After reading that, I was like, hold up, let's take a step back. And excuse me while I nerd out, but let's talk about it. What was the railroad doing? It was a function of settler colonialism, and that is the facts. And settler colonialism aims or works to displace indigenous bodies with settlers. So the fact that he was hired for a tourism campaign means he was directly involved in this process. Lundgren benefited from the genocide of natives in a unique way and based his livelihood around it. He says things looked better when a process of elimination took place. On a surface level, this could mean trees or animals, but guess what? Indigenous bodies are land, water, and life. Like, that is included, and settler colonialism aims to displace it and results in extraction of those natural resources and elimination. So overall, like, at bottom line, this is settler colonialism. On a deeper level, you could say, it's about the elimination of specifically southwestern tribes. Like, that is the geographical region. The painting is an evil fairy tale because we are not separate from the landscape. In reality, we are not separate from the landscape. Settler colonialism separates us from the landscape, but we are not inherently separate from the landscape. And yeah, this piece is a relic of settler colonialism. And that's what I have to say on that. It really, like, I don't want to say like I love talking about this stuff. I do, because I think it's important and I'm really passionate about it. So now the third piece I want to talk about is another landscape, and it kind of relates. It's called Janetta Falls, Passaic County, New Jersey, by Jasper Francis Cropsey, an American artist who lived 1823 to 1900. The museum description writes that he was a devotee of John Ruskin, a British writer and artist who advocated for direct observation of nature, minute attention to detail, and art connecting with the transcendent and holy. So what I thought about this when I first saw it, like, I walked up to it and I was like, this is a gorgeous landscape. I love the waterfall. I love the greenery, the trees, everything about it. But immediately, because it's a landscape piece, it made me reflect. And I was thinking, like, landscape art is extremely privileged, because who had to be displaced for your direct observation of nature is what they wrote. And in defense of my argument, sure, natives weren't everywhere all the time, but this art promotes a sense of sterile, pristine wilderness. It gives the same vibes as national parks because national parks aim to preserve. Their fundamental purpose is preservation of land, and the art preserves the scene and also encourages this idea that America has this wilderness. The wild does not exist to natives because that's our home. So yeah, those were the three pieces I wanted to discuss. Overall, my thoughts on the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, I was just not impressed. Come for me. There were cultural exhibits, with like artifact like things, and that just turned me off. There were a lot of things that, or a couple things that I was looking at that looked like artifacts, and they just didn't have signage. So that made me really curious. I am sad that I got kicked out of the Monet to Matisse exhibit, and there was no Native American art. Sorry to be the one that has to say it. Thank God there were no artifacts, no Native artifacts, thank God. So after going to the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, I went back to the Museum of Contemporary Art because I wanted a little, like, something. I wanted a little piece of art. I love supporting artists, and it felt like I wasn't going to get to support artists directly by purchasing at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. So I went back to the Contemporary Art Museum, and I especially wanted to support local artists. So, and this led me to a very pleasant surprise. I went back to the little shop in the museum, and I picked out a print that really spoke to me. So this is a print called Reducción de Daños, which means harm reduction. Unete contra la sobredosis, which means join the fight against overdose. So I have the print here with me too, because I bought it. And immediately the colors really stood out to me. The use of drugs, and not only drugs, but like Narcan, really stood out to me. And kind of the religious symbolism. I really liked the skull, and on the skull it writes defeat addiction. And I just felt really strongly about this piece. I think it's beautiful. So I went to check out, and I asked the person checking me out, like, if they knew anything about the artist, because I want to know, where the art's coming from, who the art's coming from. And they smiled and they were like, "Oh, it's me." And I was like, "No way, that is so cool. Like, can I talk to you?" So I met Vero. They graduated from UC Riverside. And so I actually got to interview them, and they let me record a voice memo talking about their piece. So I just wrote some notes down from that conversation. And so senior year at UC Riverside is when she created this. They're an anthropology major, and this was for a drugs and culture class. Their family has struggled with addiction, and the image of the Virgin Mary that they included in the artwork, they say they're not religious, but it has helped them deal with loss at the cost of drugs. So like losing someone's loss of character. They're from rural Mexico, never thought that drugs or addiction would ever affect them. So they wanted to focus on harm reduction, and in class they learned about destigmatizing drugs and how like people can help. They talked about their feelings of discomfort and confusion about how to move forward with dealing with drugs and addiction. And they also mentioned that religion is controversial to them, which I thought was interesting because they included the Virgin Mary, but they explained to me that the Virgin Mary is important to their culture, and that's a big, part of them. And they also emphasized the need to be kind to people going through struggles. And I just thought the messages that they were sharing were so beautiful, and I just completely support harm reduction and just recovery, and that's very near and dear to my heart. So you can support Vero by stopping by the museum and buying a print like mine, or follow them on Instagram, and I will link that below. So overall, it was a really amazing day spent with my friend. We had really great, stimulating conversations about the art, and I feel really inspired to create. So maybe I'll get to it tonight. Shout out to artists. Shout out to artists. I respect y'all so much. I'm looking forward to making more content like this, and I would like to do a video on Indigenous artists. I think that would be super cool. But yeah, that's it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for entertaining me. And yeah.